Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the 4 people that showed up on time. They were all panelists, but for everyone else, we thank you that you've returned to the room. We are getting started a bit later than we would have anticipated, so this, of course, will affect our schedule for the day, but we will try to do our best to be as effective and efficient as possible. Just wanting to remind you as much as you can to try to be on time so that things can flow smoothly. That being said, I'm looking forward to our next session. I hope the coffee break was an enjoyable one. Certainly, this upcoming Fireside Chat will be. This is a panel with captains of industry, and they will be discussing unpacking the bold new Caribbean, what it takes to evolve and become. Help me to welcome the moderator for this session. She asked a phenomenal question earlier today and has had the privilege of leading some really important work through her time with the Mona campus of UWI, really just focusing on something that is so critical, the most important resource in any nation, the people that make up these companies. Her name is Diane Edwards. She, of course, is Director of MSBM Consultancy, and she will be introducing her esteemed panel. Please welcome Ms. Edwards as she comes.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Master of Ceremonies. Welcome to the last lap. We are actually in a very great position because we are the icing on the cake that you have had all these 2 days. So I'm going to ask my panel to join me, and I have a really distinguished and exciting panel. And before I start, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Caribbean Export Development Agency, DEODAT, to Chair Lynette Holder, who's with us today, and really to the government of the Bahamas, because we have had a rare treat this last 2 days. We've had rich conversations, extensive content, and really deep learnings about creating that new, bold Caribbean that we all want to create. So panel members, would you please join me? Please do come up. I got it now? Yes. I'm hearing the echo, so I know it's on. We're very pleased to have with us today 4 captains of industry and executives. These are business executives who have really achieved phenomenal success in the region. And I always like to say that we have homegrown multinationals in the Caribbean. We are actually a very paradoxical region, because you heard from the last speaker a while ago, that he is a son of the Caribbean. He's definitely one of those homegrown multinationals. We grew him, we sent him abroad. He has soared and flown. And he had some really interesting points to make, I think, that will be great in kicking off this discussion with our four captains of industry. So Dr. Brathwaite spoke about government creating an environment, a policy environment, and then getting out of the way and letting the private sector get on with it. And that's what we want to talk about here today. So with me, starting from my extreme left, is Nicholas Rees, who is co-founder and chairman of Canoe Pays. This is a Bahamian company and the newest digital payment company in the Bahamas, digital wallet. We have with us Mr. Ronald Ramjatan, who is the founder and CEO of one of our most important food exporting companies, Baron Foods, St. Lucia Limited. Then we have Gillian Charles Gallup, Executive Director, Corporate Banking and Sustainable Finance of CIBC First Caribbean International Bank. Always important to hear from the banker. And to my immediate left, Andrew Mendez, Managing Director of Farfan and Mendes, an industrial equipment distribution and services company which has recently gone into a partnership to serve the oil and gas industry in Guyana. So a very exciting panel that we have here with us today. And what I really want to start with is this bold new Caribbean that we want to create. And as Dr. Brathwaite said a while ago, we have to create that big, hairy, audacious goal that is going to galvanize support. The Caribbean is at a very important juncture where we are facing some big challenges: climate change, food security, all sorts of issues, ChatGPT and digitization. These are issues that we have to start to grapple with. We have to become more nimble, more powerful in our responses to all of this. So I'm going to kick it off by asking the members of the panel, what are the three big actions? Because I take my cue from Deodat. So we want action initiatives that can really drive change in the Caribbean. So what are the key actions that you think the private sector can take to influence the development of this bold new Caribbean? So I'm going to start with Andrew, just because he's in the pole position. He happens to be sitting next to me. And I think he brings a really interesting perspective, because Guyana, with its rapid development, has had to face immense change in the last 4 to 5 years. So they have had to really face that big, hairy, audacious goal and adapt to it. So Andrew, do share your perspective.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, in Guyana, I mean, if you look at it, we've basically gone from a highly indebted poor country in 2018 to high-income country by 2022. Then we had a sector that came into Guyana, the oil and gas sector, that basically brings an order of magnitude far more complex business models than we have ever been accustomed to or have the experience in dealing with. How do you approach an oil and gas business and you're not even on the, we're not even sure of the expectations. So in a sense, we're being pushed and forced because of the challenges of dealing with the growth in Guyana and what's happening to really face what I think where the rest of the Caribbean maybe needs to look at and go. So one of the things is, running a business, I can't abdicate the responsibility for mine and my people's future in the business to outside elements that we really have no control over. So we tend to look within and see how we could professionalize the business and how we could change outcomes for ourselves. So one of the things getting into the oil and gas sector was bringing in a partner from Canada, partnering with a company from Canada who had long experience in the oil and gas sector. That allowed us essentially to go from, within 7 months, to go from starting up the business and getting our first employees onto the first platform right? And we were actually told quietly that it was the fastest that they'd seen any company worldwide in an ascent oil and gas environment go from onshore to offshore. But that I could not have done that on my own because I wouldn't even have known how to meet what the expectations were and how to meet those expectations. So one, they gave us a bit of credibility in dealing with the sector, and two, they gave us, they helped support us in building this out rapidly. And now we're on 3 platforms that are there right now. So I think it's important, we need to look for expertise not only within but outside the region. 2, where do I go for a business model to deal with what's happening in Guyana? I don't have anyone to follow locally or even within the Caribbean. The closest thing is, what I've been able to do effectively is, and this is something for the private sector, let's not wait for the government or the world to change around us to create the conditions that allow us to grow. We need to push on our own and see what we could do on our own. And I mean, just in this room, there's a huge amount of talent that we could all tap into. Quite simply, we can learn one of 2 ways. We could listen and learn or pay to learn. But actually just sharing our experiences with each other, that means that I don't have to pay to learn the same mistakes you made. And again, that's something that I've used very effectively with partnerships and also with, unselfish engagement with people. So one of the models I used was from FT Farfan in Trinidad, where they grew from 8 million US in turnover in 2002 to 45 million in 2008. And basically I had a sort of a map of things that I could follow because we had a good relationship with the then managing director. So a lot of times putting things together, talking to other entrepreneurs in the Caribbean, working with people within the country, and then building out. And then trying to also, to the younger generation, who I find to be a lot more open-minded and willing to embrace technology, mentoring and working with them to really, help them along. A lot of times the messaging they get tends to be a bit negative. Oh, this is Guyana, and that's not how it works here. No, we need to let them know it's okay to buck the status quo. It's okay to challenge the status quo. It's okay to be different. We need to be reinforcing that, not suppressing it.
Thanks for that, Andrew. I think there are some key themes that you touched on there, which I think are really critical to the growth of the Caribbean as a region. Collaboration. We don't collaborate enough. We have to learn to collaborate across industries and across countries. I think this is a really critical lesson that Andrew's experience is teaching us. Also, adaptability. I think very much I heard what he was saying there, the nimbleness of his company in seizing an opportunity, identifying it and going after it with the right partner. I think that's so, so critical. And then I'm sure he had a lot of support in what he was doing from his partner, but also giving back that mentoring of the next generation. So I think these are some key action points that we can take away this morning. And so I'm very interested to hear now from a banker's perspective, how are the banks going to support the development of this bold new Caribbean? What can banks and financial institutions do to support the creation of this vision that we all want to see?
Thanks so much, Diane, and I just want to thank the organizers, Caribbean Export Development Agency, for inviting me on the panel, and also for CIBC First Caribbean being willing to sponsor this very pertinent and timely forum. So as you said, first I have to say, Andrew, that you were reading my notes, because a lot of what you said there from a banking perspective is actually very pertinent. For us, if you look at how a lot of our banks in the region, we compete against each other, but we actually partner a lot more too. We do transactions across the region and with international banks and multilaterals to get transactions done. And over the last, let's say, if you look at, for example, the last 15 years, if you think about renewable energy, which is a major area, major aspect of what we need to do as a region to transform that energy transition. 20 years ago, we weren't talking, may have been talking about it, but we weren't investing in it. And we had to get the skill sets in the region to be able to start doing that. And how did we do that? As a bank, as an organization, We had the benefit of our parent company, CIBC, who had already been part of that. So that's the first place where we started to learn from it. We had the multilateral agencies in the region that we were able to partner with. And then by extension, we were able to build our technical capacity, to build expertise within our team to be able to invest in the region. And whether it be one of our first investments was in wind farms in the Dutch Caribbean. We've expanded it to do solar, and we're looking now at what is the most recent thing in the region for us, which is hydrogen. We're interested and really vested in wanting to see that transformation. So I think from a partnership perspective, that is very, very important, not just from the banking segment, because I know Republic Bank was here earlier. I don't know if Nigel is still here, but we partner with other banks. We partner with the IADB, with the European Investment Bank, and the export agencies as well to deliver. So that partnership point that was raised by Andrew is very, very important. One of the first things I had on my list in terms of what I think is important for us to do in the region, it really is around the private sector continuing to do that, continuing to partner, and not just to look at, okay, what I need to do in my island, but what does the Caribbean region as a trading bloc can do. We talk a lot, and I heard a lot over the last couple of days about, speaking with one voice, how much better we can do as a group going out there negotiating, not just from a governmental perspective, but we can also do that as private sector. Because if you think, for example, let's say solar panels and battery storage, on the energy side, those are things that are in high demand and short supply. A small country like Barbados or Bahamas trying to get resources or inventory for the country alone may have to negotiate with a big partner that might probably want, or a big competitor that might probably want more of that. And they're likely to get it faster than a small order. So, but if we come together as a region and say, okay, we know what our region needs over the next 5 years, and we can negotiate. We can negotiate on price, we can negotiate on quantity. So those are areas that could be looked at in terms of private sector getting together, part of the private sector associations, and by extension across the region, and figuring out which are the areas where we can either improve our food security, improve our logistics, improve our supply, so that we get better pricing and are put at a higher level in terms of priority. The other thing I would say, Diane, that I think is very, very important for us in the region, from investment, equity perspective, being able to get access to funding. We've been speaking about this for over a decade, as far as I can remember. We've talked about wanting to do a regional stock exchange platform. Still, we haven't gotten there, but can you imagine how important, how beneficial that would be for our region? When I look at all of the stock exchanges and the activity, anyone could probably put up their hand and know that Jamaica is the one that's really going really far and really doing things there. Well, what is the best in class? What are the standards we should all be looking at to try to create that regional trading platform to make sure that the entrepreneurs and those really big opportunities can get access to funding, and for investors to get access, because some of the stock exchanges are really not doing much. So I know I said a lot, but those I think are two major areas in terms of being able to get sourcing and supply, demand and supply issues addressed, and getting access to equity capital. And it could be equity or quasi-equity, because you can also raise preference shares on a stock exchange. These are two key areas that I think as a regional team, we can actually make a difference for our Caribbean.
Thanks very much, Jillian. I think critical points again, and I hope there's someone from some of the regional stock exchanges listening here, because I think Jamaica has had the highest performing stock exchange for 2 years, 2015 and 2018. And that's partly because of the dynamism of that stock exchange. And now there's cross-listing happening with Trinidad, I know, and I think with Guyana is going to come. So we just need to build these kinds of regional institutions that will create more critical mass. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to all learn from each other, exactly as Andrew was saying, and as Gillian has just said. So I'm sure that Baron Foods has a great take on this question of stock exchange as a way of raising more capital. Jamaica has become the IPO capital of the region because everyone wants an IPO. So I don't know if that's what in Baron's Food future, but Ronald, can you tell us what you think are the critical areas that the Caribbean needs to focus on to create this new vision?
Yes, of course. Baron Foods, as it is, we started about 30 years ago, and we have taken advantage of all the systems in place, both private and governmental sector. But there comes a time, just like now, we need to expand. And the question is so appropriate. What we need to do to take the next step. And I want to think it is logistics, the banking sector has to be more proactive than they are. They are not accustomed to take the risk. That is one of the issues, and it continues to be an impediment from the startups right down to the multinational companies. They give money who has money, but there comes a time when private sector need to have a closer association with the banking sector so that we can get financing on a faster way. Then logistics. Logistics need to be improved. As a manufacturer within the region, the cost is higher to ship from St. Lucia to Grenada than from St. Lucia to Miami. It's difficult, and the questions are being asked all the time. Why aren't we trading intra-regionally? We just can't, it's difficult. And it goes on like that. So you find that we are trading more extra-regionally than intra-regionally. We need to have private-public partnerships. It needs to be enhanced. As you reach a point, we can have private and public partnership. But most times you find the governments of the region are not inclined to enter into a relationship with the private sector when it comes to logistics, when it comes to so many other issues. They have become stumbling blocks because the enabling environment, the laws that governing the enabling environment, they are not changing them as rapidly as the private sector would want them to be. So it becomes impediment. Right now, I'm suffering from that. VAT was introduced, and they have some laws that doesn't have nothing to do with VAT. And they're giving you concessions, and you can't make a move from that. So what government has to do, create this enabling environment and keep looking at it to see how the private sector can take advantage of this so that we can grow at a faster rate than we're doing.
Thanks very much. Very polemic take on the whole question, and I'm hearing cheers from the audience, so clearly they're in response. Do you agree, Nicholas, that the banks are not sufficiently supportive of early-stage financing, startups, and even expansions? And then I'm going to give Gillian a chance to give us the banker's perspective on that, because she's on the spot.
So, good afternoon, everyone. And as a payment institution, I would not want to throw my fellow financial cousin under the bus, per se. At Canoe, we always felt that there was a match made in heaven between a fintech and a bank. Where banks are larger, more conservative, more structured in their approach, they have provided a very valuable service for the Caribbean for many years. I think, however, we all in the Caribbean have the similar challenges with the fee-based model, lack of access to capital for small and medium-sized businesses, and the banks have a model and a risk appetite. I would like to just touch on the three key initiatives that I think us as a Caribbean that we need to address, and we touched on it. Each of you touched on key elements. You spoke about regulation. I think throughout the Caribbean we need streamlined regulation. We need to look at freeing and releasing capital, which is the core of the crux of the matter, and how do we do that? And enabling all of this is really embracing technology and technology and innovation. We see ourselves as really building a vision to connect the Caribbean through technology. How does one in Barbados communicate with someone in Trinidad to purchase products and have it integrated through a shipping channel that's shipped directly to that door? You talked about inter-island trade versus external trade, coming together, collaboration. And I think we as Caribbean nationals, honestly, we've been talking about this for years. It's just really a matter of just getting serious and getting to the point of saying, let's do it. You make a decision, you find if it's a mistake, you make another decision. And I think that we as our leaders, the charge to them is to do and not to speak. And that, I think we've talked enough about this. I think the technology is there. We have the finances in the Caribbean. We can lift ourselves out of where we're at, and we can do better by coming together. We are taking the charge from the private sector to try and lead the way and disrupt, and we're finding success there now in multiple countries in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana as well, and applying under similar legislation, but finding that there's significant differences in the legislation which present barriers to entry, challenges integrating and working with the banks, and educating the banks as to the value that we bring to your ecosystem. How do we include more people? How do we bring the banks more business? How do we collaborate and lower costs for people that need financial services? And I think we need to bring our collective genius and mindset together to really to do versus to speak about it, because I think we have the solutions, we just need to do it.
So, Nicholas, following on what you said then, how does the private sector create the mechanisms to come together to ensure that that policy environment across the region favors the development of fintech? How are you advocating or lobbying for that to happen?
Very, very carefully and quietly. Trying to lead by example, trying to show, hold the hands of not just regulators, but users and merchants. But we work with our regulators here in the Bahamas very closely, and we share information, we collaborate with them, and they give us guidance, and that's been very helpful. And I think that when you have a vision, you take a positive approach to implementing that vision, and you take the measured steps to have the conversations in the spaces where they need to be had to advance the objectives. Our permanent Secretary of Economic Affairs sent out a charge for all Caribbean nationals to advocate for some of these regulations and enactments for CARICOM, for deeper engagement, deeper involvement. And I think that's a charge across the region, right? And so now, how do we build consensus amongst ourselves, right? How do we build consensus so that we could really drive change? And I think the way that we do that is through technology, through unique identity, being able to identify a unique individual that has a unique position or a point, and amalgamating that information to drive and shape our economies and our countries.
Okay, okay, well, you hear that, creating those mechanisms across the region to harmonize policies, and I think that's really critical. And I want to go back to Gillian now and give her the chance to respond really to Ronald and say, oh, how is the banking sector going to become more responsive to industry, to its expansion, its startup, and really drive the growth of the region? Because this is certainly one of the themes I've heard constantly from creators, that the banking sector holds them back.
Yeah. So I can definitely speak on my bank, CIBC First Caribbean, and what we have done in the region, not just with a large infrastructure or government and large private sector, but we certainly have a fairly significant portfolio of small business, small and medium-sized enterprise financing. And I mean, go way back in relation to where we not only support new businesses, there's obviously a gap between a deal that has to, at the end of the day, be a viable, bankable project, because at the end of the day, we are lending our depositors funds, and will always have a risk management analysis to be done, but we can demonstrate from what we have done that we have invested quite a lot. I could say to you, over the last 5 years alone, we have invested over $5 billion in projects across the region in our small business customers, in building financial awareness with our customers, and in also investing in transformational digital tools to help to bring our clients convenience, to be able to help them to ease in terms of settlement of their payments, and also, I would say, even investing in our youth as it relates to our internship programs. So a very quick example of what we're doing as an organization to deliver to our customers. We had a group of we have a MOU with the University of the West Indies where we bring on interns, and we brought on over 70 interns and have invested over $1 million in scholarships to those to the UWL program. And we've been able to benefit and work with the technology team, the Technology Institute in the UWI, and develop soft applications that allow our customers to be able to get funding within 10 minutes. That is not something that we have anywhere in the region right now. And that is what we call our loan store. There's an app for it. And we're developing that not only for our private or personal banking clients, but we're expanding on that so that we're able to provide that level of convenience. As it relates to business expansion, we certainly are there for it with a number of our customers who have been able to not just expand their business on the ground, but across the region. And we have a lot of good examples of where we have done that. I would say, too, that in relation to investment in and supporting the discussion around moving regulation, moving frameworks, or especially regulatory frameworks that help ease the ease of doing business, that's a big issue that we have been advocating for a long while, not just in these types of forums, but when we sit with our regulators across the region, when we sit in the bankers associations, these are things that we recognize that impact the level of ease of doing business. There's a lot of bureaucracy that does sometimes, not just sometimes, it actually hinders business. And therefore, that's an area in terms of from the government side, we need to be able to address. We can bring the funding, and I think someone on the previous panel mentioned when we were talking, when Joellen was discussing the aspects of unicorns, there's a lot of liquidity in the bank market. We are financing a lot of projects, but there's sometimes projects that we have in our pipeline aren't able to move as quickly as they could move because there are delays in whether it be regulatory frameworks or whether it be delays in getting licenses. Those are things that it would be helpful from a government perspective if we can, or regionally, create an execution hub that helps to move those things forward and take away those bottlenecks that prevent these aspects of doing business. But to Mr. Ramnachand's concern, I'm happy to sit down with you and discuss what your concerns are with regard to getting the opportunity to expand, because certainly we would want to be able to support you there.
And sometimes it's not more or less for myself. As we speak openly, is for the startups. That is the area I'm more concerned about, because they are the ones that do not have collaterals.
So
they have the world of ideas, and they are being stymied because of all of these factors.
So I want to address that, because I'm going to be quite open here on that. There's room for startups and there's room for viable projects. If you're a startup and you come to the bank and you have a bankable project, we do have, as I said, we are funding projects that need to have a viable and repayment. We do not donate, okay? So if you have a viable project and you're a startup and we can see that that project has cash flow that can support financing, we're here. We have our team here that's ready to sit down and work with it. But if you're a startup and you don't have a business plan and you don't have a clear objective of it, we have teams that will be able to advise you, or we have persons that we can refer you to that would help. So for example, in Barbados, I know Dr. Holk can speak to that. There is the Enterprise Growth Fund that could help support a startup. There are grant funding that's available that in many instances, if we have a chat with someone and they're not yet ready to move to a commercial bank funding, we can refer them to someone that will be able to help them and guide them. Many times, we offer free advice and service to help people. So startups is a very broad term. It can start with an entrepreneur that just has an idea to someone that has what you would call a fully thought out, well-analyzed transaction that we can move forward with. And so that's where I would say banking, commercial banking, we have financing products for small businesses, medium-sized enterprises, and startups that are well packaged and that we can take forward and say that we've managed the risk in what we're providing a customer. So with that, I think we can certainly expand on that afterwards.
Thanks, Gillian. I think financing we could spend the day on that, but it's a critical area, and we're glad to see that the banks are on board. Andrew, from your perspective, I know you're a big advocate of private sector really taking the lead and running with it. And Guyana, in its massive expansion, are you also facing financial challenges? And what can the private sector do to really drive the expansion that we want to see? And after this, I'm going to ask for one or two questions from the floor, so please prepare your questions. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, again, I'll go from personal experience. So we were facing challenges, for instance, so let me step back a bit. So I know we talk here as with Farfanaman as being in oil and gas, but actually it's only about 20% of our business. We prefer to be diversified, and we don't like all our eggs in one basket and be tied to the roller coaster ride with our commodities business. But what we've done effectively is leverage the expertise that oil and gas has paid for to build out capacity in the rest of our business to help that run better. And because of that, we were able to leverage that, for instance, to go after funding with IDB Invest, because the local banking sector obviously want assets that they can secure against. The IDB Invest revolving fund for our solar projects is basically tied to the receivable on the projects. So it means that I don't have to leverage my assets. So that's one way I'm saying is, if we put our heads together, we share these ideas, we help other companies that maybe they can access that. Just simply here talking about the solutions, we're putting ideas out there that everyone's listening to. So I think having these conversations with people in the private sector, helping each other along, sharing ideas, I think is maybe the best way to get at it. And then also too, you know, I would certainly ascribe to the philosophy of lead, follow, or get out of our way. So for instance, you know, there was talk about the regional private sector, right? And that's not really happening. I think probably nationalistic aspects to that. But, you know, quite honestly, you know, one of the things I might consider in the near future is probably floating on the Jamaican Stock Exchange, because the Guyana Stock Exchange only trades once a week. And I don't think they've had an IPO since the 90s, as an example. Jamaican Stock Exchange is more dynamic. Well, we go outside of the country and seek financing. That way we get around, you know, and then if enough companies start to do that, hopefully the policymakers wake up and look to change the status quo. I think we can lead by example as a private sector. You know, as I said, I have a major issue with abdicating my people's future to things outside of my control and expecting things to change, the world to change to suit the issues that we're facing. You know, we've gone through fundamental change as a business. I mean, where we were, but all the certifications, all the qualifications, everything, but it's made our business better. I mean, even going through the process with getting a loan from IDB Invest, you know, we went through due diligence like a bank, but it did make us a better business. So yes, it was very time-consuming and challenging, but it made us a better business. You know, what's happening in Guyana, as I said, we're competing against the rest of the world. So I have to actually go out, talking with people and say, you know, learn from their experiences so I can prepare our business for what's coming. And it's just starting in Guyana. This is just the beginning.
Great stuff. Well, Guyana is a tremendous opportunity for the entire Caribbean, and I think we really all need to be, you know, in the old days they said go west, young man. It's really now go south, go to Guyana, because that's where it's going to be the real pole of economic development. Okay, would love to have some questions from the floor. Is there anyone with a burning question? Yes, please go ahead. Can't see you properly, but please just tell us your name and your company, okay, and ask your question.
Hello, good afternoon. Keegan Patrick from Optronics, customer of First Caribbean for the last 2 years. I think they're a great bank. I love their services. I think my point of view will come from a startup, and I will share some of my experience and where I think it could be better. So for me to get access to a credit card, I need 2 years of financial statements. For me to get access to e-commerce solutions or credit card processing, I also need 2 years of financial statements or a loan facility. My startup has been with the bank, and over the last year, we have 10x our revenue. And we're not asking for capital or for a credit. We're asking for a credit facility, for a credit card, in which these are facilities I could open, have more money credit access on my personal bank account in the US than I could have with my business that has a lot more money than my personal account. So I think maybe from a high level, there is the incentive to want to allow for faster access to capital, but I don't think people on the ground who I might be talking to has the empowerment to override something like you need 2 years of financial statements to get a credit card. You need 2 years of financial statements to get a loan. I think that's where we start having, I can't be a startup, a fast-growing startup, because I can't get access to capital. If let's say I have a project or a contract, I need an extra $10,000, $20,000 US. I have to go through a 6-month loan process, and I've been with the bank.
I think what you're saying is that we really need more early stage financing. We need more venture capital and angel investors.
Thank you.
And I think that's really where we're going.
Yeah.
So
I
commercial
don't need that to
banks
get a credit
are
card.
not going to fund the kind of early stage financing that you're at. And we understand that.
No, I don't. I think there's a misconception. I'm not asking for capital or a risk. I could get a credit card in the US if I was in the US. I'm showing financial statement. I'm not asking for a risk.
No, understood. Yeah. But I'm just saying that what we're really focusing on here is how do we build that new Caribbean that we're talking about. And what you're saying is really apropos to that. So thanks very much. Jillian, you had a point?
Yeah, no, I don't want us to get lost in in this conversation, because that's not what we're here for, I would say. I would say that from what you've said, from the concerns that were raised about the startup, Diane is correct. There's a space for equity capital, there's a space for venture capital, and there's a space for commercial bank funding, just like there's a space for multilateral financing, whether it be from the private sector or public sector side. So I'm not going to allow this here to turn into well, the banks are doing all things wrong, because we have a vested interest in the region. A number of the banks that are not just the ones that are owned outside of the Caribbean, but also the ones that are indigenous. And we do a lot in the region to support businesses, small businesses, and the larger businesses. I think in terms of the areas I think we can focus on that helps to continue to promote the right actions to be able to deliver things faster. A major part for the region is digital transformation, which a number of the banks are moving to. Our digital transformation and the amount of millions of dollars that have been invested over the last few years to make banking in the region better, we are seeing the benefits of it. We're seeing the ability to better and faster make settlements for our clients. We're working with fintechs to be able to deliver as well. And whether it be business to business or business to consumer, those are a lot of the things that, from a technology perspective, we're investing in. The other thing I would mention is we are also investing in smarter AI, right? Because AI has the capacity to really move the needle in terms of, like somebody like yourself who may have been banking with a bank for how long, be able to tap into the data. So it's two things, AI and data analytics. Tap into that data to be able to see what your behaviors are like in terms of being able to say, okay, and that's what I talked about, the loan store, being able to know that we have existing customers in here who have a history of data, and we're able to see that and say, okay, this is a customer that we don't need to send them through a manual process. They can actually go in and determine whether they can get funding in less than 10 minutes and fund their account in less than 10 minutes. So this is not a bank battering conversation. This is how do we move our businesses, both private and public sector, forward. And sorry, Diane, I do need to speak to this. We want to see the region move forward in the right direction. Speed is an important part, and we recognize that in the banking sector. Private sector needs to be able to also be able to move forward as well. But most importantly, as a region, we need to move forward as a region. We heard a lot of the government agencies or the ministers speak to that. We need to be able to have our voice heard as one. I think the Bridgetown agenda, although it says Bridgetown and you think Barbados, this is a Caribbean agenda. And to be able to see the World Bank make decisions about how they do business with Caribbean governments is a huge win for us, because we did it together. And the more we speak as one voice, whether it be in private sector or public sector, the better we're able to drive business forward, to drive the socio-economic development of our region and the employment of our people. That is what really matters. And if we don't do it, we're going to be left behind. We have to do it.
Gillian. That's
sorry.
Great.
Execution. There's one last thing, and I'm going to stop.
Okay.
Execution hub. I would just ask the CARICOM governments to think about having an execution hub, because I think there's a lot of policy discussion, but we need to be able to have a policy, an execution hub that actually takes the policies to drive it across the region, because if we agree to things at the CARICOM level, but the countries aren't actually implementing it, we're not going anywhere. And therefore,
Agreed.
that is an area that we need to really focus on.
Agreed. I'd love to ask for, in the time we have remaining, really a 1 minute, what would be the the two most important actions you think the private or the public sector could take to really achieve and drive this new, bold Caribbean that we want. So starting with you, Nicholas.
So, and I would still like, I'll address it in the context of the question raised by the young gentleman, and really he's speaking to inclusion or lack of inclusion, but also education, and this is where the innovation hubs and the accelerator programs come in, so that young entrepreneurs coming out of high school, coming out of college, they have ideas. Where do you go to incubate your idea? At what level and stage of the business you're at for the particular type of financing that you need? You're going to have a pitch competition today sponsored by Draper Ecosystem. We've, in the Bahamas, taking the lead in the private sector, have launched a Canoe Innovation Hub. And what we're doing is really driving and collating those ideas, bringing individuals in, educating them, providing them access to top-notch training that will incubate them all the way through their journey as an entrepreneur. I think driving that access, crowdfunding platforms, you got 45 million people in the Caribbean. If you got half of those individuals to donate $1, $2, you've got a significant raise, and this is how we pool our collective resources together. So I think coming together, the collective genius, and implementing the technology that we have available. So.
Great, thanks. Ronald,
Yeah,
you got 2 minutes.
I would like to think that governments need to be a little bit more creative and enterprising, which encourages innovation and having the youths more integrated within national development. And how we can do this? We heard the expert from the AI yesterday said we have the curriculum has to be revised. Not all youths are academically inclined. The ones who are not, we should start having technical institutes from secondary level and get them trained in all levels of plumbing, masonry, electricians, and whatnot. This will in turn create a vibrant workforce. Right now within the Caribbean, you can't find a plumber when you want one, you can't find a mechanic, you can't find, and we have lots of youth who are idling by doing absolutely nothing.
Okay, absolutely. We all face that issue. Andrew, you have the second to last word, because I'll have the last word.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things I would like to see the governments really focus on is our education system. We have an education system that focuses on regurgitation of facts, when education today is actually about knowing how to ask the right questions. If we take the keynote speaker yesterday, he was saying that for the AI coming now, you need to know how to prompt it with the right questions. We're not teaching our people and our kids how to do it. And also, too, in our school system, we're crushing curiosity. When do kids get to be kids? What does a kid need 22 CXCs for, and the whole validation as a person is tied up in how much CXCs they have? When do they get to play? When do they get to encourage their imagination? Curiosity. So that needs to really change. And then it impacts our business because it doesn't drive critical thinking or problem solving. The other thing is I would say the Junior Stock Exchange in Jamaica is a great example, because what it does, it gives the young entrepreneurs, makes them get their governance right, set it up right so it runs right. Then they have a strong mentorship program to help them list, and they get access to financing. So as an incubator and access to capital for startups, I think that's a great model.
Great, thank you, Andrew. We have heard a lot this morning that I think can be really taken on board. We've heard about educational transformation and the drive to develop talent that is relevant to the new opportunities in technology and digitalization. We've heard logistics, more inter-island trade. I think Ronald was very strong on this. More opportunities to trade amongst ourselves and not always to go outside of the region. And that means logistics as an enabler. We've heard a lot about finance, and finance is obviously a huge area, and expanding that finance and access to finance. And I think we've heard very strongly collaboration, and collaboration both at the government level and at the private sector level. And we've heard implementation, and we know the importance of implementation and creating mechanisms to achieve the big, hairy, audacious goals we set ourselves. Dr. Brathwaite talked about setting quantitative and smart targets and action plans to achieve those. And that's where I think as a region, we need to go. So I think Caribbean Export, you have your work cut out for you. You have an agenda, you started it, you got everyone involved and excited about setting the agenda. And I think we leave here with a very powerful and exciting agenda to build that bold new Caribbean we all want to see. So thank you very much. You've been a great audience. And thanks to the panel.
Deciding to become an entrepreneur takes courage and a strong belief in yourself. It takes tenacity to step outside the norm and do something different. It can seem challenging, hard, and scary, but it requires you to be resilient mentally, emotionally, and physically. At Access Accelerator, we know the challenges an entrepreneur can face and the resilience needed to overcome obstacles throughout your entrepreneurial journey. We are here to support and help your entrepreneurial dreams and aspirations come true. At Access Accelerator, our goal is to help create a Bahamas where everyone has a fair opportunity to succeed. We aim to diversify wealth and drive the development of a robust and resilient economy. We are an initiative that advocates for and supports the evolution of entrepreneurship in our country. Here at Access Accelerator, we believe in you.
Thanks again to that outstanding panel, again to Diane Edwards, Director of MSMB Consultancy, who led that, and of course, vigorous conversation, some critical things we know that we have to work on, and so we hope that even as we talk, that there are action steps being formulated by the phenomenal people in this room who truly do control what happens in our countries. We're looking forward now to a really exciting conversation. I will tell you, when I signed up to be the moderator of this great event, it was certainly very humbling and I was grateful for it, but I was most excited about what's coming next. They told me, and you might have heard this as a child, we will get our government in order when pigs fly. Has anybody ever heard that? When pigs fly. Well, now, they said to me, we're going to be talking about ships. Ships that fly. Y'all, this is a serious thing. Because now if you have ever made the joke, I'll do it when ships fly, you better make good on your promise. Because the ships are flying. In this next conversation that's going to be led by a very, very phenomenal man, Joseph Cox, who of course is the Assistant Secretary General of CARICOM, we are going to be learning about ships may even fly, promoting investments in logistics and transportation. And Joseph has over 35 years experience in economic and social policy, specifically around growth. I don't know if he's seen a ship fly before either, but he's going to see one now. Let Joseph please come on up, and he's going to introduce this outstanding panel to you. Please give them a round of applause as they come.
Just a slight correction, ladies and gentlemen, it's 30, not 35. From here? good afternoon, everyone. You hearing me? I'm not the most soft-spoken person, but nonetheless, I do try. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to be looking. We are looking at what is it now? I'll give it the appropriate thing. We're looking at transport. Well, transport and logistics. Of course, part of it will be, of course, interrogating this issue about flying ship and the flying ship technologies. But just as a matter of introduction, ladies and gentlemen, this region is in the midst of what you would call a renaissance. We're looking at a time in our lives when, frankly speaking, we need the qualities of youth, not necessarily as a time of life, but as a state of mind. In other words, we need inventiveness, we need creativity, we need to be looking at some of the issues that really confront us, and we have to look at it in a very clear-eyed manner. I must confess that sometimes when we hear some of these, you know, in the past, we have heard of persons coming up and speaking about the transformational nature of what they're going to be doing for transport, regional transport. Since I work at CARICOM, we seem to be the butt of everybody else's complaints. We pick up the slack, but the truth be spoken is that a lot of the so-called transformational solutions that are put on the table, rather than transforming for a lifetime, don't seem to even make it through lunchtime. So we have to look at this issue in a very clear-eyed manner, and to treat with this issue today, I am quite pleased to introduce my panel. And panel, let me start with Hannah Swift, who is right beside me, who is a country manager Caribbean for Virgin Atlantic. Then beside her is Bill Peterson, who is founder and CEO of Flying Ship Technologies. Then we have Doug Cooper, who is vice president of Tropical Shipping here in the Bahamas. And last but by no means least, Darwin Telemark, who is chairman of the Port Management Association of the Caribbean. So that is the distinguished panel. Indeed, I deem them to be transport czars, who I suspect possess all the expertise to credibly guide us through these issues of transport and logistics. So let me start the ball rolling with Doug Cooper. Doug, what are the key challenges in Caribbean logistics and transport due to the region's geography and island-based infrastructure? And are the financing solutions and incentive structure necessary and sufficient to overcome the identified challenges? Simple question.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you've heard over the last couple of days is artificial intelligence. One of the practical solutions that we can have in the Caribbean is embracing technology. One of the key questions is, how can we simplify documentation requirements for ease of doing business? How do we transform every single port in the Caribbean with electronic data interchange, what we call EDIs? And that's really through technology. And if I can give you a perfect example of here in the Bahamas, the Bahamian government implemented a $12 million investment into Bahamas electronic single window. And it's a digital, completely digital platform that allows the carriers and the ultimate consignees or importers to electronically exchange data and take away any documentation that always slowed the process down. Much like Hannah in transportation, when your ships aren't moving or your aircrafts aren't flying, there is an inherent cost that comes with this. So embracing technology is going to help get you some of the economies of scale that you're going to need to obviously provide a lower cost to the end consumer. Another one of the, there's not a lack of capacity in the Caribbean. If you look at the dynamics of southbound, inter-island, and northbound cargo, just to give you a rough idea, 60% of the cargo that comes into the Caribbean is what we call southbound cargo. There's around about a 20 to 25% inter-island and there's about 10-15% northbound. So in order, as we understand it, containers, ships they have a return journey. So how do we fill up that gap between southbound and northbound cargo? I think that's really the question that we have to ask ourselves. But if we embrace technology, that will certainly help drive down some of the costs because we do have the capacity within the region.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And that is a nice place to our point to introduce Bill to the conversation. Because the IDB in a study a couple of years ago identified nearshoring opportunities valuing some $5 billion for the region, which, also we're in the midst of a real estate boom. Now, the obvious question for you would be, what would be required to realize this sort of goal, and what role does innovation, the principal part of it is, what role does innovation play in the rationalization of our supply chains to make them more efficient and lower cost?
That's a pretty complex question.
No, but they're all simple questions.
There we go. Can you hear me now? It does. No, definitely a very complex question. I mean, it's clear that the supply chains are broken right now. There are huge issues and fractures, and to me, it's astounding that in order to ship goods around the Caribbean, a lot of times you have to go back up to Florida and come back down. It just doesn't make sense. So what we are doing with our partners, Ramps Logistics, is we're creating a distributed logistics network around the Caribbean where we can deliver a delivery van-sized payload to virtually any island without having to travel through some of these major hubs through this kind of antiquated spoken hub model. What we've developed is what's called a wing and ground effect vessel. It is not an aircraft. It looks like an aircraft, but it's more like a high-speed hovercraft that travels on a dynamic cushion of air. So it's classified as a maritime vessel. And we're scaling this up right now. So to your point about what we need from our perspective to be able to support this is to continue to grow. We are building a 20-foot version of our craft now. We've had multiple 6.5-foot prototypes. And so it's about creating, again, it's that distributed logistics network, not the old school model where you either have two options. You've got air freight, which is very expensive, or maritime shipping, which is very slow. There are no middle options for those time-critical, price-sensitive goods or types of delivery. So we'll be doing that with our partners.
That makes a lot of sense, and we'll come back to those issues in a few. And let me bring in now somebody who I will characterize as my guardian angel, because with all the flack we have gotten about intra and interregional travel, Hannah, who is, of course, with Virgin Atlantic. Virgin has recently announced a number of new routes and some of our islands in an era where I suppose we can arguably say that intra-regional travel is a challenge. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, coming here from Ghana, I went through New York and back down to the Bahamas. So that is just indicative of some of the challenges that we have faced. But the obvious question to you, Hannah, is what is it that Virgin Atlantic has seen that others haven't? Why haven't others been replicating that intervention in terms of expanding their routes within the region?
Thank you. Can I ask for a quick show of hands who has had trouble traveling interregionally in the Caribbean? A few of you. A few of you.
Just a few.
So I'm based in Barbados, and I came also via JFK on a red-eye flight yesterday. So it wasn't with us, thankfully. But yes, to your point, interregional travel is an issue, not just from a leisure perspective, but from a business perspective, if people have meetings, and then from a cargo perspective as well, and traveling and taking, what did you call it? Expensive air freight? I think you'll find we're competitively priced. So there was an issue that we saw. So we actually have launched in June of this year interregional flights that go between Barbados and Grenada and Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, both of those offering 3 flights per week. They are on our existing flights that we already have. So we worked on how do we capitalize on filling those seats where people are getting off in Barbados and putting people on to go down to St. Vincent and the Grenadines or Grenada and vice versa. So we worked on that project for a long time with the governments, and thankfully the governments in the Caribbean are extremely supportive of that. And it means that we've been able to add extra capacity. So our flights that are traveling between have about 262 seats on them. So that's 262 opportunities for people to travel interregionally between Barbados, Grenada, Barbados, and St. Vincent. So it was really around looking at what we had already and trying to add to it and not kind of reinventing the wheel, but offering something separate and offering something new. And we've seen astounding pickup from those routes already. So thank you.
No, but just a quick follow-up to that, because one of the arguments we always heard, and I'm coming to you, Darren, don't believe I've forgotten you, is that the passenger loads from the smaller countries, that the passenger loads are not there for the flights to be viable. So what has been your experience thus far?
I couldn't disagree with that more. I think if you try to travel interregionally, one of the issues is you can't actually buy a flight on any of the other carriers because they're full already. We have seen certainly over the summer since we launched, between 50, 60, sometimes over 100 passengers getting on our flights per sector. So it has proved really, really popular.
So in other words, all we were hearing before were excuses. Okay, fair enough. Darwin, I come to you now. Another simple question, if you don't mind. Are there any initiatives or projects aimed at improving maritime connectivity, reducing costs, or enhancing the sustainability of maritime transport in the Caribbean? And specifically, how do considerations like port infrastructure, customs procedure, and security impact the cost and efficiency of maritime transport?
That's one question?
It's a simple question.
I think that I'm sitting with an air carrier, maritime carrier, and somewhere in the middle. So there's transport here. But I'm always clear that my interest is the Caribbean, and my interest is in ensuring that there are Caribbean options for what we're doing for existence. And so as we discuss this transport concern, we have to look at what are we doing as a Caribbean to bring about some of the things that Mr. Cox just asked me. And I will say that there are some inherent challenges that can lead to some of the efficiencies that he's asking. For example, our ports, which are our gateways, airports, seaports. Some of them, we've upgraded the airports in many islands, but on the maritime side, our ports are not as efficient as they should be. They're pretty archaic and outdated. We have limited production that hurts the backhaul in terms of the freight rates, so you have to charge in one direction. That creates challenges for us as Caribbean people. And then you end up with issues of lack of technology, and then you run into customs that is an old relic of the British rule that we're still under, something that we should get rid of. I'll speak to that a little bit. And then we run into our own singular individual issues where we have so many borders that it inhibits integration at the commercial side, it reduces scale, and really hurts us. So in 1886, the US Supreme Court passed a law. It was the Interstate Commerce Law that prohibited any state from affecting what another state does in terms of commerce. And Mr. Cox, wouldn't that be wonderful if you could end up with a situation where CARICOM could get the decision that says
every island could open its door, not to the world, but to each other. The greatest issue of regional logistics is us. When the British ruled us, the British moved freely among the states that they controlled. There was no stopping it because it was a British empire. We now have many little empires, and that's a problem. It's a logistical problem, because every empire wants to restrict the other, and then those of us come in this room trying to make that region better. Well, it can't get better, because the restrictions are preventing us from engaging the way we should. So I would say before the ships, before the ports, we need the enabling engagement that would allow us to cut the borders open so that we can trade, so that the young people who have dreams of being able to do business with their counterparts in neighboring islands are not prohibited from doing so because their own ports and unions fees and customs fees added to the receiving port fees makes it impossible. So we need to take a look at how we can fix that. And that's us. That's not someone else. That's us, and I'm sure Mr. Cox here works very hard on that every day. And we, as a private sector, and those of us who are interested in that, should look to see how we can do that. There are some other inherent issues that I see in the region, which is one of transport. Transport is not owned regionally. As a matter of fact, when you drive across the bridge, and the next time you do so, look on the right to the left, and you'll see a whole host of ships. The Bahamas has the unique position of being multiple islands. And as a result of that, there are connectivity requirements, and they do that with ships. In the Bahamas, they protect that connectivity with a cabotage. That cabotage ensures that Bahamians cannot afford to buy a ship because there's legislation that protects that owner and the group of owners in the Bahamas. So you can't be overtaken by a foreign vessel coming and taking your business. We're talking Caribbean people. If you go to the BVI, the same thing happens. There's a proliferation of ships owned by BVI Islanders that takes place in the BVI. If you go to Trinidad and Tobago, same thing. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, same thing. But when you come to the Caribbean, it doesn't happen because we don't have the structure that Mr. Cox and those at CARICOM have been trying to do that would allow for the full integration and logistics. Forget AI, forget technology. The basic things are not happening because on a human-to-human perspective, we have not done enough to allow for us to touch each other, and the walls are there, and I've been saying it for a long time, break the walls down. Let's give our people a chance to engage across borders, and let's change the dynamics of our region. So we have an issue with air travel. Air travel is a big problem. It's a big problem because we don't have enough people moving throughout the region. Well, not really. That's not true. We do. But if you have 2.5 million Jamaicans trying to get across the region, every place they go, they're stopped, they're harassed, they're kicked out. Wake up, Caribbean. And then you look at the people from Santo Domingo, they're not allowed because that too has visas and restrictions. If we're building a Caribbean, it shouldn't be CARICOM, shouldn't be CARIFORUM. It should be a space that is open to all the people, and as we use the resource that is necessary for commerce and proper active socialization to take place, maybe we will have a chance. And I'll end by saying this. If you think I'm wrong, how many of us have ships connecting to the Bahamas? Zero. It doesn't happen because we are not open to each other. And a Caribbean export, I will tell you, that is maybe a session we need to look at. How do we break the walls down? There's one last point. I have supermarkets in the Caribbean bringing stuff out of Santo Domingo. How do you think most of them get it? Some are able to get through. Most of them buy it from Miami. It leaves Santo Domingo, it goes to Miami, it pays for the warehouse and the distributor to mark it up, and then we buy it. That's a country that produces more food than the entire Caribbean combined. We could solve food security by simply engaging, but there we have a wall again. I probably should stop.
No, actually, I want you to continue. I want you to continue because I want to hear your comments on the food security aspect of it.
Thank you. Well, if you want food, we have it. Tropical Shipping here ships. He doesn't have a problem on the back haul from Santo Domingo. It's full. It's full with food, full with 807 cargo, full with all sorts of stuff that is made in a country in the Caribbean. It comes to Miami, then we buy it. I think we can change that a little bit. Tropical won't mind shipping it from the Santo Domingo port to us. Second, I did a delivery just last week in Martinique on connectivity, and Cuba has 10 million people or more. Santo Domingo has 10.5 million, Jamaica 2.5, and Haiti has 11.5. What do they all have in common? They are at the northern tip of the Caribbean. Guess who are the toughest people to move through the Caribbean? 30 million people. We could solve the air issue we have by allowing these people to move. As a matter of fact, if Caribbean Airlines were to be honest, they are surviving on that Jamaica-Trinidad route. And if that route, and by the way, it's not an easy route either. So we are our own biggest challenges. And we can sit down and fix it with our leadership. And don't forget the British scenario. When it was theirs, they allowed it to work the way they wanted. And if you think I'm kidding, they chose the islands that they wanted to do the things they wanted. Now every island wants to do everything for itself, and we are going along the merry way, trying to merge something that is disintegrating. And if you want to see greater disintegration, is to allow AI to become a reality in the Caribbean. When you don't need to move people, and you're only moving digital information, we're gonna get worse. We have to wake up, folks. Let's break the walls down before what we have are islands that are very close, but miles apart.
All right, sir. We hear you. We hear you loud and clear. Just be advised and be reminded that come March of next year, we should have absolute free movement throughout the region. That's what the heads of government have all agreed to, and that is what is going to be in place. So let's see what transpires there. I mean, we may have different views in terms of like some of the food security issues, but perhaps we'll treat to that at another occasion. I'm curious.
Joe, if I could just to piggyback on a comment that Darwin made. You've got a really good scope of what's going on in the Caribbean, and there is no excuse for us to do CARICOM trade. As our organization, we go to 39 ports throughout the Caribbean and Central America. We have vessels that come out of the Dominican Republic, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, Guyana. So we have the infrastructure to make these things happen. So as a solution, that's there. So we have part of the solution, but to Darwin's point is there needs to be a lot of collaboration.
No, agreed, and I'm glad you raised that, because in that particular, let me put down this now. Apart from this now, one of the things that we have to be looking at is how mature our financial models that we are applying in terms of the transport and logistics sector, and in terms of our incentive structure, where we're seeking to encourage people to come in. Are they truly globally competitive, and are they transparent? How does that fit into the mix? Because well and good we speak about what we want people to, come in and do, and what are the facilities you have.
We're not going to get the economies of scale.
Sorry?
We're not going to get the economies of scale that you get from, for example, an Asia-America commerce. The vessels that are coming into the Caribbean are as small as 100 TEUs to 2,000 TEUs. You've got some freighters that are leaving Shanghai or Ningbo to Long Island, coming through the Panama Canal, that are holding 20,000 TEUs. That's real economies of scale. So we as a region, as an organization, we don't consume that level to get those economies of scale. So we have to also understand the smaller vessels, we're not going to get the economies of scale with local landing charges, local taxes, and it's quite polarized from different countries throughout the region. Some are very low, some are very high. So once again, there needs to be collaboration if you want food security from, say, the Dominican Republic to other Caribbean countries. It can happen.
Yes, I know, but we also been hearing about a food hub that is being created, food terminal rather, is being created between Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad, if my memory serves me right.
And
yes.
The food hub in Guyana and Trinidad is a futuristic discussion. Right now, we have globally competitive goods being manufactured out of the DR. It comes to the United States, they produce it there, and it comes here and it works. So scale is relative. We can get good enough supplies. As a matter of fact, and I'm not here being an ambassador for the DR, but it makes sense. The DR is effectively the only market that is engaging the EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement, the way it should. That too speaks of capacity. They're going into big, large countries and competing. If they can build scale in that space and they have that large volume of production, if we engage them, we have hope. So we can significantly reduce the food security challenge, the cost of food, the availability of food, by simply engaging and doing it the right way. Additionally, if we want labor, we are a brother's keeper. We don't like the Haitian people, and I say that unapologetically, because a lot of islands don't allow them in, but they're some of the hardest working people, and we can use them to help build our economy and give them a future and transform their country as well. There's 11.5 million of them. That's more than all the islands combined. So there's some, that's scale, that's resource. The most critical resource for your development is humans. And we have shrinking populations. We're not making as much children as we should. We have regional space that we can pull resources from to build. So I think scale can be achieved for within our space using some of these larger markets.
Yeah, well, that is all well and good, but at the same time, region is committed to a 25 by 2025 strategy, which is working considerably well. I mean, we're talking about, for example, in Guyana, 1,000 acres, additional acres going into soya. We're talking about 22% growth in agriculture, 17% in Guyana, 17% growth in Jamaica. So we can't equally, whereas nobody can criticize the need to collaborate. We also have to also build capacity within our own markets to ensure our ultimate food security, because what we'll end up doing if we're not careful is displacing our local farmers, and then we end up with a real problem, because we know what monopolies do. But let us not get too sidetracked with this, because I want to, indeed, at this point in time, I want us to look at the issue of how the Caribbean is actually addressing the digital transformation of logistics, such as e-commerce and digital supply chain management. And indeed, what exactly are we missing? That's a question that really could come down. And, you know, as we look at it, and of course we are going to be hearing or having Bill do a small presentation on his flying ship in a few seconds, but I wanted to get a sense of what is it? We keep hearing, for example, we heard a very impressive presentation yesterday on AI. We keep hearing about e-commerce. We keep hearing about the supply chain issues. But what are we doing? What are we missing? What is it that is not driving that transformation now?
Well, some countries are doing a great job of it.
Sorry?
Some countries are doing a great job of it.
Okay.
The Bahamas, for example. They're a completely digital platform with Bahamas Electronic Single Window. I work for a U.S. company, but I'm also a Bahamian, so I can express some of the frustration that we used to have. It would take a day or two to take carriage of goods, whereas in today's world, as soon as that container is discharged at the port of Nassau, the consignee can take possession of their cargo. No waiting around. That's why the first thing I said was technology and embracing electronic data interchange, because we get the real efficiencies for the end consumer. Can you imagine having on-time and real-time inventory in a country like this that has very little space? It's 21 by 7 in Nassau, has 2 major hotels. Neither of them have warehousing. They have minimal warehousing because they rely on-time arrivals and being able to process the cargo prior to the cargo actually arriving in the port. So taxes are paid, customs entries are done behind the scenes outside of normal working hours. That's very progressive. Prior to that, the only cargo that people were taking possession of was perishable cargo through a bond at the last minute that the port was open. It was always a rush. So that, I just want to give you an example that it can be done.
No, I'm not saying it can't be done, but the fact of life is that it is not being done.
But we
there's
don't
also there is also the issue that I'm suspecting that will be impacting Hannah, and of course, now I'm going to ask Bill to do his presentation. And obviously and honestly, one of the questions that we have to confront is the uncomfortable truth. It may not be the case here in the Bahamas, but it's an uncomfortable truth too many places within the region, and that is that the region is deemed to be a transshipment port for drugs, right? And therefore, everybody has to take into consideration how you deal with that dynamic. And I'm not making any excuses for anyone, but I suspect that that's part of the consideration that is being brought to bear. But folks, hold your questions, hold your issues, because this now is Bill's moment to tell me about this flying ship. You want to call it the flying ship of the future, sir? I love it. So I will yield to you at this point in time, and then we'll come and interrogate some of the other issues after. I'm presuming that we are ready?
Yeah, fantastic. I was going to show a 30-second video real quick just to give some examples of the scale.
You ready? Okay, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we able to play that video or? Fantastic.
Okay, here we go.
Did anybody else hear that? If you want to be part of something that's going to make a difference then. So the political will is there.
That alone, I think, is quite exciting, and it just gives you an idea of what you can expect at SIF 2023. If that's the type of technology that we're talking about.
There's need for fresh vegetables, and maybe that flying ship will test its capabilities throughout the Bahamas and throughout the region.
Yeah, thank you. So, as I mentioned, this is a wing-in ground effect vessel. It is not an aircraft, and so it is really a ship. It's like a high-speed hovercraft, and it travels on this dynamic pocket of air. Because of the classification and the inherent efficiencies in the design, it is less than 1/4 of the operating cost of comparable aircraft. It's 10 times faster than anything at sea. It's green technology. Our initial versions are all electric. We're moving to a hybrid electric version temporarily for better range, and it provides countless numbers of additional access points around coastal regions. And again, we're doing this in partnership with Ramps Logistics and a few of our other customers around the world. This fits in very nicely with the major themes of this conference. You know, one of the things that Dr. Blythewaite, earlier speaker today, virtually, he mentioned that the Caribbean needs to be accepting of some of the early adoption, early technologies, adopt the early technologies. The supply chains and the maritime logistics market is ripe for disruption. It's an antiquated system. And I'm not targeting you, Doug, or the industry, but things have not changed in a major step function way, since maybe what the motor, the gas-powered engine. So it is time to make another step function change. So with this, we will be our goal is to create that sort of distributed network that I talked about between the islands, so that we can increase commerce between the islands and lower the cost of imports and exports to improve the lives of the people in the region. This design shows we've got the tilt motors blow air underneath the leading edge, so it pops it out, can take off in heavier sea states. And as we design, we increase the size of this. So next size is a 20-foot vessel, and we're scaling up to a version that can take 6,000 pounds, 1,000 nautical miles to virtually anywhere with a coastline. So with that, we're looking forward to bringing this capability to the Caribbean.
All right, no, we hear that. Hannah, are you nervous? Because I see this now as another form of competition for
and we don't see this as a form of competition.
What do you see?
This is a supplemental. It's like in the States, if we still have air freight around the States, and we still have trucking. So this is another mode of transportation that is just going to supplement the existing modes of transportation.
I see it definitely as a partner. So in the UK, we've partnered with a company called Vertical Aerospace, who have an electronic flying taxi. So we are always investing in these new technologies throughout the Virgin Group. So for our cargo friends, I see it as let's take it to our hub, and then you use these to take it elsewhere. So not nervous, excited.
No, but that is good, because at least we have the partnerships that can be established, meaningful partnerships. But going back to, because when I looked at your video, again, I see the innovation, I see the utility in doing it. But I also see, and I know where some minds will go. When I saw that plane go right up to that beachfront, what came in my mind was not ease of transport for legitimate goods, but ease of transport for some other things. And what came to my mind equally was nightmarish thoughts of 100% stripping of containers, every kind of bureaucratic intervention you can dream of, just to treat with that. How do you, those are realities we have had in the past. How do you combat something like this while remaining on the cusp of innovation?
No, absolutely. First off, it's not a plane. It's a maritime vessel.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Which is a natural concern, but I can tell you that it takes a very sophisticated IT system to be able to operate this. So, there are major barriers to entry, and we're only partnering with, very, very credible logistics companies in order to implement this technology. So we're not selling to the cartels anytime soon.
I didn't expect it to be going to the cartels, but you see, the thing is simply is that, in the same sense that with the shipping, part of the challenge we have with the shipping of goods is because of that. The drugs and the contraband that comes in. So,
Absolutely. And our partners have very stringent controls around ensuring that doesn't happen. And so certainly we're going to work with them and allow them to sort of handle that.
Okay. No, fair enough. And indeed, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I advise that because I want this to be as truly interactive as possible. So if you have questions that you want to raise with the panel, irrespective of what I might have said before, please feel free to, make yourself known so that we can take the question for the panel. But in the interim.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about the maritime single window.
What?
The maritime single window. That is a requirement that the IMO has established for all ports throughout the world. Ports are paper heavy. And the IMO is saying to all countries, we will no longer allow our captains to interface with your customs and border control and port authorities with paper. So we have to go digital. The date for that is January 2024. Many of our ports are not ready, and it's something that we have to do to get ready. Now in Antigua, we were blessed with the support of the IMO and the country of Norway, and we developed the maritime single window for all small ports globally. And we are now extending that to all regional ports. So yesterday with the OECS ports, we established with the IMO an opportunity to build that out. What does that mean? If you have cruise ships coming to your country, when they arrive, they have to wait for the customs and immigration to go on board, and it takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes to sit with the captain and have a drink and come off. Your taxis are waiting, and then you have 6 ships. So before it's all done, it's 2.5 hours of, plane time. Well, with the single window, it now means that when the ship leaves Miami, we can clear it digitally. When it arrives at the port, the gangway comes down, and folks are on your country, going into cabs, going into restaurants. Now, that is technology that advances a significant higher yield to your national tourism product, because if people are staying on your island an hour or two more, the spend goes up. So here is an opportunity where the technology can actually benefit us, and something that we are driving so that our ports could become way more efficient. Now, for tropical, imagine tropical is waiting for that boarding party to leave the cruise ships to come to clear the cargo ships. So for 2 hours, they're sitting at berth. That becomes a cost, and that cost is multiplied by 28, 30 ports, and all of a sudden, they have built into their pricing model a significant amount of cost that you were just speaking about here that would otherwise now go away, because that cargo ship as well, with the adjustments we've made with the technology, we can clear the cargo digitally, we can clear the ship digitally, so when tropical comes to your port, immediately we can start discharging. These are advances that we're doing. Antigua is already doing it. We are rolling it out shortly. Barbados is coming up next, and then all of the region should be ready within the next 8 months to do that. What that means for the private sector is that your reefers will get to your stores way sooner. You won't be waiting, so your quality of life will also improve. So there is some significant steps being taken to advance our way of life and quality of life with the technology, although it is mandated and we have to follow along. And I think that's something worthwhile, just puts it out.
Okay. There was a great question that was asked to me just before I got on here is, how does foreign direct investment correlate to transportation in our region? Where are opportunities? If I could be so bold, the biggest opportunity is in private-public partnerships throughout the Caribbean, where you have the private sector running the efficiencies of the port, that are investing in freight handling equipment that is getting better turns, meaning more lifts per hour. And once you start to get those yields and you get ships in the quickest possible time and exit at the quickest possible time, where you are maximizing the efficiencies of that supply chain, you would be surprised at how those cost savings transform into the end user. Part of the problem that we have in our region is antiquated equipment at ports. We have dwell times and discharge times that are not up to global standards that need to be. Now, these are part of the things that we understand, and they're different from every country. So this isn't specific, but there are areas of improvement. So one of the questions that was asked is, could FDI come in? Look at the private-public partnerships. Another example, I know I'm going very Bahamian-centric, but it's near and dear to my heart, is the Nassau Container Port. 40% owned by the government, 40% owned by the local private sector, and 20% under an IPO under the Bahamas Stock Exchange. You have 11,542 people that own shares in that port. And when I tell you that is the most efficient port in the Caribbean, the statistics prove it. So if you go back to 2012 to today, when the Nassau Container Port was built, and you see the model, the PPP model they have, that should be the gold standard and the benchmark throughout the Caribbean.
No, and that's fine, but you see, I'm coming back to Bill, because I'm curious, in terms of, one, tell me a little bit more about your intervention, your development there in the flying ship. One, in terms of, is it being done in terms of a public-private partnership? Do you embrace that concept? That's one. Two, in terms of actual costing now, because I don't know, I can't envision scale in those things, to be honest with you, but I'm just wondering, like, how many containers can it fit in terms of overall costing and distance and so on, and of course, we'll come back to my great fear of the stripping of containers, because I don't know why I can't get this image out of my mind, where you have somebody stripping a container, breaking the vacuum seal, don't have a vacuum, can't reseal it, and they end up, what was a container suddenly got to a container and a half, and all sorts of other issues.
Absolutely. So you mentioned public-private partnerships, and then, so let me start with that.
Right.
So it's absolutely critical. So right now we're beginning to work with some governments to establish some, I guess, trailblazer routes and what those will look like, because you absolutely, our objective is 100% safety first. And it's also to be able to your second point, I think you were asking about costs, right. Cargo routes.
How much it can actually hold, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. So it's less than a quarter of the operating cost of comparable air freight per pound. So our objective is to bring maritime shipping costs at air freight speeds, so that the way that we look at it is the Caribbean is very much almost a bunch of cities dotted around with no infrastructure, fixed infrastructure in between that enables, that virtuous cycle that is created when you lower the cost and increase accessibility and allow the locals to make things and to sell their products and to import things at a lower cost. And so this, through that public-private partnerships, we're opening up, we're trailblazing this. And then I think it was mentioned before, at a certain point you need to be sort of let go, and we need to be able to continue to innovate.
I know the market to move, but no. But before I bring Hannah in, I'm curious. How many, even with your 20 foot?
Yep. So 20-foot one will be able to transport about 500 pounds. That's not where the market is. This is sort of still a baby step. Yeah, sure. We are moving to be able to take IATA pallets, which is what Hannah's company has in the belly of their aircraft, to be able to move 3 LD3 containers. And I think it's LD9 containers. We can get about 2 of those in the refrigerated units, so that we could take the, again, fresh food, being able to take fresh food, medicine, or anything that is time sensitive and price critical that needs to be, in an environmentally sealed container. We can do that with these crafts. So being able to take 6,000 pounds, 1,000 nautical miles is where we're going with this.
Okay. Anna?
Yeah, so I thought, as everybody else was giving a bit of a plug as to what they can carry, let me give a plug as to what we can carry. So for winter this year, we have 45 flights per week into the Caribbean, covering 8 different destinations, plus our 6 interregional flights per week. And from a cargo perspective, we can carry up to 20 tons per flight. And for those of you interested in passenger numbers, that's around 13,000 passengers in and out of the Caribbean per week. So you can see we might need some extra support for cargo there, for the hotels and other tourism feeders.
Interesting. All right, thank you very much. I realize that I have 2 minutes left, but the time has gone. So what I'll do is just ask each of you to give some final comments, and then we'll wrap up. So Darwin, let's start with you. And be brief, sir.
Thank you. I think we should safeguard regional traffic and transport for regional investment, regional ownership, both by air and sea, and we should build those cabotages around protecting that for Caribbean people and Caribbean investments.
Okay. Doug?
Embracing technology through electronic single window platforms, allowing us to get the most efficient scale that we possibly can. And the second point is looking at private-public partnerships throughout all the Caribbean ports and regions. Respectfully, get it into the private sector, let it be run by the private sector, let it be held accountable by the private sector. You get that supply chain management done, it's a game changer for our region.
Yeah, we've been really excited about the overwhelming reception that we've received, and we've been pulled here. This is our second time at the Caribbean Investment Forum. We are coming back to the next one, and we definitely encourage this continued growth and push towards emerging technologies. We need it in order to be able to implement this here. So we are looking for those public-private partnerships. Thank you.
And I have the last word.
Woo, I would say come see me at the stand and let's chat further, but we are here, we are committed to the Caribbean. We have more flights, more seats coming into the Caribbean than ever before, and that's cargo as well, holiday makers, passengers, but then for my fellow Caribbean people, come chat to me about our corporate discounts, because we are very much supportive of Caribbean people getting out into the world and showing off what we have to offer.
Indeed, and ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 seconds left. This is just my time to tell you thank you very much for your attendance and your engagement, and we do hope that this has been edifying.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause. Certainly a very enlightening, passionate panel. I'm hopeful, and I think all of us are, as we listen to the great minds in the room discuss the challenges that face us. And just a reminder that, again, the call is to fall in love with a problem and for us to be the solution for that problem. So thank you so much to Mr. Cox and our esteemed panelists for that session, and you may exit the stage. It continues. It continues. We've already had one panelist say they're coming back to CIF 2024. And we are excited about talking today about the launch of next year. We are already in planning for that. And so coming now to have that conversation about what CIF 2024 will look like, I'd like you to welcome Leo Knott. He's the Deputy Executive Director for the Caribbean Export Development Agency. And he's going to be moderating the launch of the CIF 2024 ceremony. Now, before, I want to make sure that you all are ready, right? We're talking CIF, so you know what I have to do. I've not done it all day, but you know what it is. I'm going to point to the far side left, and you will say, oh my goodness. They need food, right? Yeah? We can try it. So let's sing for our food. We'll try it again. The far side will say, the middle will say, and the far right will say, way to go, F. Okay, I can let Leo come on up. We're going to launch now CIF 2024.
Good afternoon, everybody. In this second edition of the Caribbean Investment Forum, we have grown to be the premier multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary platform to accelerate the closure of the region's investment gaps and ultimately transform our economies by providing jobs and opportunities for our people. This initiative, championed by Caribbean Export and our partners, has enabled attendees to explore abundant investment opportunities spanning agribusiness, renewable energy, digitalization, fintech, logistics, and shipping. Now, when you have a good thing going, why stop? This is why, with great enthusiasm, that the Caribbean Export is happy to announce the upcoming third edition of the Caribbean Investment Forum in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. We are extremely grateful to the government of Guyana, and especially President Ali and his cabinet, for their unwavering support of this initiative and our agency as a whole. The Guyanese economy continues to grow very rapidly, supported by the government's modernization plans, including the unparalleled oil sector expansion and growth in non-oil sectors, supported by the implementation of a fast-paced public investment program that focuses on transportation, housing, flood management infrastructure, and raising human capital, all pillars that we hold dear here at Caribbean Investment Forum and our agency. Spillovers from this rapid growth are also fueling growth in construction, supporting growth in the services and supply sector, while agriculture, mining, and quarrying are also performing very well. Following the record real GDP growth in 2022, which was of 62.3%, the highest in the world, real GDP is expected to continue to grow extremely fast in 2023. With that same enthusiasm that we announced the next CIF, we look forward to all of you, our participants and delegates, and hope that all of you will be joining us in Guyana. Let's capitalize on the deals and conversations that we started here today. Join us to continue to unlock the vast investment opportunities, strengthening the regional partnerships, and fostering prosperity across the Caribbean. We look forward to welcoming you all in Guyana for an event that promises to be a game changer for all of your investment journeys. At this moment, I would like to invite the Honorable John Pinder III, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Investments, and Aviation for small, brief remarks as our current host here in the Bahamas. Give him a round of applause.
So I know you're expecting the Deputy Prime Minister. So I hope we don't disappoint you too much. However, this is an absolutely fabulous event. I love when I hear about Caribbean and investments on the same stage. But the Bahamas is most honored to be the second, to host the second annual Caribbean Investment Forum. Economic growth, profitability, and environmental sustainability are the key outcomes of this endeavor. Tourism through foreign direct investment, agriculture, manufacturing, and small business development undergirds the existing economic viability of the entire region and has resulted in this opportunity to collaborate with you to further strengthen our individual and collective economies. Tourism sectors highlight new opportunities for expanded, Tourism sectors highlight new opportunities for expanded investments in technologies, renewable energies, digital transformations, it's important, logistics and transport, as we had just heard some about that just now. Empirical data allows for retooling, retrofitting, and reinventing our offerings to fit the evolving economic landscape, while our political stability further enhances the investment propositions. Interregional and global partnerships bolster economic stabilization and social transformation, and protection, economic independence, food security, environmental governance, and the climate change mitigation, to name a few of the benefits of collaborative participation with global partners. Our region lies within the vibrant economies of the North and South Americas, with global boundaries diminishing. We have great opportunities ahead of us. That said, your presence in the Bahamas is a clear indication that we are the top of the mind for future integration, beneficial partnerships, and lifetime friendships. We acknowledge all government representatives, delegates, investors, European Union, the CARICOM Secretariat, speakers, presenters, the Caribbean Development Bank, international and regional sponsors, the press, of course, and observers. On behalf of our Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable I. Chester Cooper, the people of the Bahamas, we recognize and thank those aforementioned. Deodat Maharaj and the team, Atlantis, always does a wonderful job. Their team on the ground here, I'm sure you've all had a wonderful experience here during this CIF. Here in Atlantis, it is the backdrop of the islands make it so special. And other stakeholders and suppliers. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of National Security, I thank you. The staff of the Ministry of Tourism, Investments, and Aviation. As we all work together to move forward in this country and throughout our nation, we would like to pass the baton on to Onij Walron, the Minister of Tourism, Industry, and Commerce of Guyana, as we look forward to reviewing the results of this year and building upon them for a brighter future. May we all work together for for a bold, new Caribbean. Thank you.
And with that said, I would like to invite on stage on behalf of the Board of Directors of Caribbean Export, our chairwoman, Dr. Lynette Holder, to stage. And for our new host, the Honorable Onish Waldron, Minister of Tourism, Industry, and Commerce for Guyana, for the symbolic handover of the CIF host torch. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister Davis, the Honorable Chester Cooper, and the entire government of the Bahamas for their support as they hand over the host title to the government of Guyana. So now we'll go with a symbolic handover. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, and a round of applause for our new hosts. Well, thank you very much. Well, now that we know how we're carrying forward CIF, on behalf of Caribbean Export, I will like to offer our closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw the curtains on Caribbean Investment Forum 2023, here in the stunning Bahamas, on behalf of Caribbean Export, I stand before you with immense gratitude and profound sense of accomplishment. This event has been a true testament to the power of collaboration, innovation, and the enduring spirit of investment in the Caribbean. None of what has transpired in the past 2 days would have been possible without the meaningful and intentional support of the government of the Bahamas, who have been an exceptional host, offering us the perfect backdrop for these critical discussions and showcasing the beautiful landscape and warm hospitality that this country is renowned for. We are truly grateful for your gracious hospitality and commitment to economic growth. I would also like to express our deepest appreciation to our longstanding partner, the European Union, with whom we work towards the development of a robust and resilient private sector in the Caribbean. Your commitment to fostering economic development and partnerships in the Caribbean region is commendable, and we deeply appreciate your unwavering support. When we talk about bringing transformational change to the region, we know it takes a village. We are grateful to our village of supporting partners, sponsors, and their generous contributions that have played an integral role in making this forum a resounding success. We would like to especially thank the Caribbean Development Bank, the CARICOM Secretariat, Republic Bank, Draper Startup House, Invest Trinidad and Tobago, Invest TT, Virgin Atlantic, the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Confederation, Invest Barbados, La Corporación Andina de Fomento, CAF Bank, Access Accelerators as BDC Bahamas, Grand Bahama Port Authority, St. Kitts Investment Promotion Agency, SKIPA, Invest Turks and Caicos, Guyana Office for Investment, the Export Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, CIBC First Caribbean, and Caribbean Airlines. Our board of directors, as well as those board members that have been supporting us here in person, we also salute you. Your belief in the potential of the Caribbean region and your investment in this event have not only created opportunities, but have also reinforced the importance of collaboration between public and private sector. Over the past 2 days, close to 150 business meetings have taken place, laying the foundation for new partnerships, investments, and collaborations that will undoubtedly change the economic landscape of the Caribbean. Beyond these structured meetings, the informal exchanges that transpired in the exhibition hall or in the hallways were equally significant. These impromptu interactions often are the birthplace of innovation and cooperation and are a testament to the vibrant energy that the Caribbean region has. Our investment villages hosted solutions in agtech, transportation, and logistics, digital solutions, ICT. There in these villages, we showcase investments to the tune of $300 million. Invest Caribbean, we also want to thank Invest the Caribbean and OCO Global for their work in helping us package these projects and doing the lead generation efforts to bring over 40 institutional investors to the forum. A huge thanks to the entire Ministry of Tourism, Investments, and Aviation, who have worked seamlessly with our team to deliver this event. And of course, I want you to join me in a resounding applause for the team at Caribbean Export. Damie, Joellen, Tanya, Natasha, Michaela, Dario, Veronica, Kellyanne, Edna, and Sherry, along with all of our colleagues across Barbados, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. As we part ways, I encourage you all to carry forward the enthusiasm, connections, and ideas that have flourished in this forum. The relationships forged here will not only benefit your individual enterprises, but will contribute to the growth and prosperity of the entire region. Thank you all once again for your participation and dedication. I would like to express my hope that the bonds formed here will only strengthen over time and continue in CIF 2024 in Guyana. We'll see you soon, safe travels, and see you in Guyana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Knott, and the entire team again for a phenomenal past 3 days. We are going to go to a lunch break in just a moment, but I do want to encourage you again to go to that CIF Fairs app to see what happens after lunch. I'm advised that the winner of those prizes, tickets on Caribbean Airlines, will receive an email notification that they've won those prizes, and those details will be given there. But after lunch, we have ICT and Renewable Energy Investment Village that's going to be in Hera 1 and 2 from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Country Pitches will happen today, and that's going to happen right here in Imperial E. That goes from 2:30 to 5:15. And then again, the business meetings continue in location Eros, the room Eros 1, 2, and 3. And that space will be available from 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you in one of those spaces and trust you will enjoy your day. At this time, to prepare you for lunch, I'd just like you to stand up for me.